Hello everyone and welcome to our chapter Understanding Custom Keywords in Katalon Studio. Let's begin with a simple question. How many of you have repeatedly written the same automation steps in multiple test cases? Now, consider this. What if you could create a reusable function that performs these steps with just a single line of code? Wouldn't that make your automation framework more efficient, cleaner, and easier to maintain? Well, that's exactly what custom keywords in Katalon Studio helps us to achieve. Let's look at a real world example. Imagine you're testing an e-commerce application and need to validate checkout process. Every test case begins with the following steps. The very first is open the browser, navigate to the login page, enter username and password, click the login button, verify successful login, and proceed to the checkout page. These steps are repeated across multiple test cases that requires user authentication. If something changes, that is, let's say the login button ID or an additional authentication step is introduced, every affected test cases must be updated manually. This is very time consuming and prone to human error. The solution is custom keywords. Instead of duplicating these steps across test cases, wouldn't it be much easier to create a single reusable function that handles user login? That way, whenever we need authentication, we simply call this function, making our test more maintainable, efficient, and scalable. Or think about waiting for an element to be visible before clicking it. Katalon has built-in click and wait for element visible keywords. But wouldn't it be great if we could combine these two into a single reusable keyword called wait for element and click? And that's the power of custom keywords in Katalon Studio. Now, what are custom keywords in Katalon Studio? In simple words, a custom keyword is a user-defined function that performs a specific automation task and can be reused across multiple test cases. Instead of writing the same steps repeatedly in different test cases, you can define a custom keyword once and call it whenever needed. Breaking it down to simple terms, think of custom keywords like mini programs that helps you automate repetitive actions effectively. Suppose built-in keywords in Katalon are similar to pre-installed app in your phone. For example, click clicks on an element, set text enters text to an input field. These are already provided by Katalon and can be used directly in test cases. On the other hand, custom keywords are like custom applications you build yourself. If Katalon doesn't have a specific function that you need, you can create a custom keyword to perform that task exactly the way you want. Now, how does a custom keyword work? A custom keyword is essentially a Groovy method, a reusable function, stored inside the keywords package in your Katalon project. Once created, it can be used in any test case just like built-in keyword. Next, how are custom keywords different from built-in keywords? So to explain this, I have created a simple image so you can easily understand this with the help of this image. The availability of built-in keyword is provided by Katalon Studio by default. And for custom keywords, it is created by user based on project need. In built-in keywords, the customization is limited to what Katalon provides. For custom keywords, the customization is fully customizable. That is, we can modify the logic, add conditions, etc. For built-in keywords, the reusability is it can be reused but cannot be modified. And for custom keywords, it can be created once and reused across the projects and can easily be modified. Examples of built-in keywords are webui.click, webui.setText, and the examples of custom keywords are wait for element and click and log into application. Now, next is example scenario. Let's say we are automating a social media platform where users post images. We often need to wait for an image to load before clicking on it. So if we use built-in keywords, we first have to use webui.wait for element visible, and then we have to use webui.click. The problem is every test case that clicks on an image will need these two lines. So instead, we can use a custom keyword. We can simply create a custom keyword and use it whenever we want to wait for an element and click. Now, why are custom keywords important? The very first is avoid repeating the same code. Instead of writing the same steps again and again, we create one reusable function. For example, instead of writing login steps in every test case, create a keyword like login to application and use it anywhere. Second, make test easier to read and update. Long test scripts can be hard to understand. And custom keywords keeps them clean and organized, which improves the readability and the maintainability. Even if the login process changes, we only need to update the keyword once instead of editing the multiple test cases. Third is save time and effort. Custom keywords reduce the time needed to write, debug, and maintain test scripts. For example, instead of writing wait for element visible and click separately, we can create one keyword that does both operation automatically. Right? Next, we have make test more reliable. Sometimes test script fails due to timing issues or slow loading page issues. So custom keywords can include waiting, retries, and even error handling to make test more stable, which improves the stability of a particular test case. And next is do more with Katalon. Katalon already has built-in functions, but sometimes we need extra features. For example, with custom keywords, we can fetch data from a database, send custom API requests, or even read data from an Excel file. Now, you might be wondering, where can we use custom keywords? Real world examples. I'll tell you a few of the practical scenarios where custom keywords can save time and efforts. The very first is web UI automation. Custom keywords can be used in different types of automation to save time and make tests more efficient. Let's take an example of web UI automation. So instead of repeating login steps in every test case, we can create a reusable keyword which is login to application. Or let's say wait for element and click. Let me actually show you one. So for web UI automation, we have login to application and wait for element and click. Similarly, for next we have API testing. Instead of writing API request in every test case, we can simply create send post request. Let me open Katalon Studio, send post request, right? In similar way, we can use for database testing as well. So instead of manually checking test data, we can create fetch user data from DB method, right? Just like we created over here. So it will fetch the user from the database. And the next is file handling. For example, instead of manually creating test data files, we can create a custom keyword generate test data file. This automatically generates files needed for the test case. This was just a high level overview of how custom keywords can be used. In the coming chapters, we will learn step by step how to create custom keywords from scratch and implement them in real test cases. Now, moving forward, we have practical exercises. Identify repeated Identify repetitive tasks in your project. So before we move on, let's do a quick exercise. First, think about your current automation project. Now, identify two repetitive tasks you find yourself writing in multiple test cases. Now, imagine how you could create a reusable custom keyword to simplify it. Let me give you an example. In my project, I always have to enter a username and password before starting a test. So instead of doing this manually, I could create a simple custom keyword, log into application that takes credentials as parameters. For next example, we can take handling pop-ups and alerts. Many web applications shows pop-ups or alert messages that needs to be handled before continuing. So instead of writing separate steps every time, I could create a handle pop-up and accept keyword that detects a pop-up and clicks the OK window automatically. Now, conclusion. Why custom keyword matters? We have learned that custom keywords are essential because they avoid repetitive code. They make test cases cleaner and more structured. They improve test efficiency and reliability. So, that's all for this lecture. I'll see you in the next chapter where we'll learn how to create a simple custom keyword in Katalon Studio step by step. Thank you.